One of the problems of the current era is that we've become very desensitized to things that are taking place on a large scale level. Um, to give you a basic premise of what I'm mentioning, a lot of times you'll have liberals and people on the left who will say that during the Reagan administration and just other Republican administrations, they turned a blind eye to the poor and to the um, underprivileged. And, whatever, people can have their opinion. Um, but you'll also notice on the part of many Democrats that in those eras and in the present era, they're not doing anything of their own to address what they call themselves being so bothered by. A good example would be this issue of DACA, where Trump decided we're going to make it to where anyone who was here illegally, in spite of the fact that they were brought here as children, had no choice of their own in the matter, is going to get sent back to where they were. Now, I personally disagree with that, but what did these office holders do that call themselves so disgusted and outraged by his actions? Well, they don't do much of anything other than give speeches. The DNC chair, within moments of that decision being announced back on, I think it was September 5th, by the Attorney General Sessions, all the DNC chair did was give an address, a speech, and like a couple of senators took to Twitter to go and write about how disgusted they were at the injustice of such an act. But ask yourself this: if they were so concerned and so bugged and so fatigued and so disturbed, why didn't they create some kind of commission or alliance amongst themselves to see to it that a number of these DACA affected individuals were legalized prior to the deadline? Ask yourself that. You know, Whether you like it or not, the law is the law. And again, I personally think it was a choice that wasn't correct, but um, there are ways things can be responded to without just saying, "Oh, that's so awful." Wicked Gesture says, "As a liberal, I can detest to what you're saying." Well, look, I identify as a person on the left as well. Um, Not more so far left or anything else as they like to call it. But this is not just in the realm of politics. You have it in on the level of the uh, everyday life of Americans, just people in general. A good example would be the recent saga we had with the transgender. This person wanted to be referred to as a woman, and I did that for the entirety of the time I spoke to them until they referred to me out of my name over something someone else did. Now, I even conceded in a stream that for whatever reason isn't getting uploaded. It's due to YouTube's um, mobile app not being that great. Uh, but I conceded. Look, what I had to say was very disrespectful. It was, probably offensive to that person. It was definitely offensive to that person. But I was also offended by their choice to insult me first. Um, and my argument was, you can't demand respect and then not give it back, and you also can't expect repercussions for things you do outwardly that you know are not good. If I go up to a drug dealer right now and slap him in his face, and he blows my brains out on the sidewalk, you can infer that if I hadn't have gone up and slapped him in his face, probably wouldn't have blown my brains out. Now, in the course of talking to this person, who I am going out of my way to not mention that much, but they're a good example of this. They complained about these commentators online who talk about the plight of African Americans and just their current dynamic. But what was absent was any distaste or disgust to the people who are within the black community, for example, that go and molest children or kill anybody. Um, these were things they didn't talk about, because even if you say and turn a blind eye to the fact that all these children are being born out of wedlock, and you say, you know what, they're still having parents. Just even if you give them that exemption, you can't argue against the fact that more often than not, if you're African American and you get murdered, it's someone that looked just like you. And, we can go into the dynamics of those cases, but I think you can infer that someone who's killing a person over the most trivial of things oftentimes is doing more damage to a community than someone who's just voicing an opinion that you don't agree with. I think, the four people in here can attest to that. I would hope. Um, Again, this goes back to being upset with what someone had to say. And as I told you, I had a mostly positive reception. Let me say hello to know that day has come seven. Yeah, so um, don't poke the beast and expect it not to lunge at you. Exactly. Let me see. Is there a way I want to stamp that or put that up, do something to just kind of have that on the screen. Um, Another example of this was in the fact that most of the reception of what I had to say was positive. I had a majority of likes on that stream, and I explained my position. I don't enjoy, calling someone something they don't want to be referred to as, but you can't, demand respect and then not give it back. It doesn't work that way. Um, but you had a lone commenter who left this comment on another video where they said, you're disrespectful towards transgender people, and they put this exclamation mark as though they're so incensed by what I had to say. And ask yourself this, and I mentioned this before in a separate stream. Um, if you are someone who is so concerned with the plight of that group of people, why are you not addressing the issues which afflict a majority of those people? And I don't know if the four of you in here all know this, but for example, if you are a transgender in the US, automatically you are 41% likely to attempt suicide. So that means for every five transgenders you see, two of them, statistically that is, will have tried to have killed themselves. And also, while the national unemployment for everyone in the U.S. is 5%, the national unemployment for transgenders is 15%. So if you're transgender, you're three times as likely as the average American to be unemployed. That means almost a fifth of all transgenders you see won't have, you know, a situation that is readily having them employed. And then Angel is asking what my email is. Uh, I don't even know. Well, you can. I'll tell you afterward. Post a comment. Wicked Gesture says, "Yup, I know one who tried it, and I had to redirect her to a suicide hotline." Exactly, but ask yourself, if you are so concerned with the plight of this group of with transgenders, you want to defend them. Why are you and your supposed other people who are concerned with their plight not going around and forming some group or organization and deciding to address the fact that if you are transgender, there's 2/5 of a chance that you're going to try to kill yourself, and there's almost a fifth of a chance that you're going to be unemployed. I would think that's a more pressing thing than a guy on the live stream talking about, one with male pronouns because she decided to, call him out of his name first. But you know why they don't do that? It's because it's easier to sit and grandstand in comment sections and try to play as if you're the hero in this scenario. Okay, Kyle is quoting Madagascar, and I'm sure that I don't know how that's relevant, but all right. Envoy says, "Hey, I'm going to say hello." Um, it all it's funny. All these things go together, and I guess part of what is worrisome to me when I bring up those political examples, they're not designed to necessarily disparage one group over the other because I've already voiced my distaste with both political parties in general, but it's designed to show you that there are common themes that you see both in how the world's currently going with the people that are put in office and just how people are in general that you encounter on the street, that you encounter online. And it goes back to this thing of just empty words and trying to be upset because someone said something. We go back to this thing with this. this teacher that left that nasty comment about Bush. Um, I didn't agree with it, but I said she shouldn't be fired. And you actually have had people who are calling for the resignation, when in reality we know that if it had been someone that they didn't like that died, and someone that said, "Yay, I'm so happy," they would have not been bothered. It goes along with your bias. People just have to start admitting, and not, if you had a good opinion of that person, forget what the other one is saying. So it's all mind-numbingly aggravating, because you ask yourself, well, if I am such the problem, then why are we having these other issues? If the people who are making comments that you don't like are truthfully what needs to be focused on and gone after, what do you say of those who commit homicides and other felonious acts? What is the response to that? Again, I am firmly convinced that the reason people go after any commentator, whether it's, one that is going on a campus and getting shouted down by some students that are upset with their views, it has a lot to do with accessibility and a bit of a almost fear, because I genuinely believe that most of these people who choose to ignore the true issues are worried of the repercussions of just kind of being that one person who's saying, "Hey, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening." Okay, Wicked Jester rather. We live in an age where people want to be oppressed but don't know what true oppression is. Just like with the thing with these cops, and I keep trying to make the claims of it being like the civil rights movement. You had black only and white only signs, and now I'm supposed to get offended every one less than 10% of the time, where, or rather, yeah, less than 10% of the time where a cop actually is behind one of these fatalities. And truthfully, even the homicides, we have to question how much those really matter, because we have so many deaths from heart disease and car crashes that just don't go, they're not talked about, they're not discussed, they're not put to the forefront. And we're running into an era now where people just think, well, if we just keep complaining about, you know, one or two of these deaths a year, something will change. It doesn't work that way. And truthfully, if they wanted that change, ask yourself this also. Why don't they reform their own communities or do something to infiltrate the system they say is so oppressive? Why don't you become a judge? Why don't you become the officer that polices this community? Again, practical solutions that people don't want to make the long-term strides toward. It's gotten almost comical to where you express a negative view of me, but it doesn't stop you from calling for me to do something for you. I just think it's hypocritical. You can't have it both ways. I can't be the guy who's keeping you down, but you also want me to, let you protest and agree with everything else and ignore the fact that you're calling me all manners of evil. It doesn't, or at least it shouldn't go together. Practical implications. So, um, I will definitely have something out tomorrow, and I appreciate those who decide to tune in. I was just kind of sitting here wondering what I was going to talk about. I found something, so thank you for watching and have a good day.